let's try to get back to work, and let's not make this the longest board meeting we've had in 3 years. So, here to present our next item is Paul Wing and Stacy Byers. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the Berry County Conservation Easement Board bylaw revisions, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the Berry County Farmland Preservation Selection Criteria, and to approve or recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the Berry County Open Space Preservation Selection Criteria.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gibson, support by Parker. The floor is yours.
Okay. I'm gonna do the bylaw part of it. Because we changed our name from the Berry County Farmland Promotion Board to the Agricultural Promotion, no, wait a minute. Berry County Conservation Easement Board, that's a little tough for me yet. We changed the name throughout the bylaws. And that's the main thing that we wanted to do. Well, we also have a problem with our board being manned completely. At this point, the township representative has not been filled for some time. We would like to do something about that. Have decided we'd like to send a letter to the townships directly and encourage them, someone, to either from the boards or from the representative, appoint someone.
Any questions for Paul?
I guess I don't understand. Why did you change the name?
Recommended from the Sheridan land.
We changed that name when we passed the ordinance.
It's already been done.
We changed the name of that board when we passed the ordinance back in May. And so the change was to accommodate the open space and the farmland, because it is an easement process. And so it's now the county conservation easement board, and so they can take care of both of the easements, the open space and the farmland. And that way no one says, well, it's only farmland that they're dealing with. We can accommodate both requests.
But isn't the open space tied to the farmland? You have to have farmland. You can,
if you had a parcel, say 10 acres, and it butts up against the state game area, which isn't impossible in your neighborhood.
right.
And you wanted to preserve it as open space, you could. I know that there's certain limitations. I'm just using an example. You wouldn't have to have any type of agricultural on it, as long as it, we're looking to make contiguous tracts of preserved properties that will either stay open space or agriculture.
Oh, well, I did know that the contiguous space, that's why I thought it had to be tied to some farmland.
No, Pierce Cedar Creek is a prime example of a conserved property that isn't necessarily agriculture, but there are little pockets around it. George Cullors has a piece of property that's close to it. It's preserved as agriculture, but he also has a piece that didn't qualify under agriculture that he would like to preserve as open space to help continue that tract of land that won't change for
We've
next
had several
generations.
landowners apply or ask for the opportunity to apply that just have a piece of swampland and forest. Now mine, if I get mine done, I've got 70 acres yet. And I would like it for agriculture, but it isn't 50% agriculture, so I'd have to do it open space.
Thank you. I wanted to ask that.
Any other questions is regarding the bylaws, and we can.
No
tag-
changes to the bylaws?
I
As
think
far as,
there was-
most of it were the name change, not necessarily any details, no major, okay. thank
The
you.
one, we specified the positions there in the old ordinance, or the old bylaws. There were a lot more, like,
There were
member
9
positions, there were
members.
9.
Okay.
And we changed those to reflect the changes that were made in the ordinance. The only other change was to the, quorum, which we had asked a couple years ago to change the quorum. And due to some changes that I've seen about quorum numbers, it was changed to say that quorum is just a simple majority instead of the at least 50%, whatever, of the seated
Specified
members.
they
So
have
it's a simple
5.
majority of the board instead of a specified number.
Okay,
So your quorum could be 3 out of the 6-member board.
Right now, because there's only 6, and the commissioner doesn't have a vote.
You know, that's a pet peeve of mine.
I do.
noted.
You could also change that.
Or we could appoint you to the board,
There
John.
you go. And then you
I
can
won't
change
go
it.
to a board I don't have a vote on.
So,
Fair.
Stacy, if you want to talk about the selection criteria?
Sure, happy to. Good morning, Commissioners. I'll just quickly summarize a little bit of what we're asking for this morning. As Paul alluded to, the ordinance was passed a few months ago, which had several changes in it. The first one including the name. We changed from the Ag Promotion Board to the Conservation Easement Board, simply to give more clarity of what that board actually does. Of course, Ag Promotion is one of the byproducts of what this board does, but that's not all it does. The main focus and priority of this board is to purchase conservation easements, whether those are agricultural conservation easements or open space conservation easements. Secondly, we are asking the board to follow the ordinance that was passed to adopt an open space and farmland selection criteria. And the selection criteria of this program, of both of these programs, is really the meat of the program. This is really the most important part of this program. This allows the board to be very objective in their selection and the ranking of these properties. We anticipate, and in my experience, we will have probably anywhere to 15 to 20 applications that come in, and we have to obviously be very discerning of which ones we take. Because we have very limited funds, we're going to have some applications in for some state funding, and we want to make sure that we're putting forth the best farms and open space properties that this county has to offer. We're looking at, in terms of agricultural land, those lands that are going to be here for perpetuity. So we're looking at things that prioritize soils, parcel size, PA 116, what kind of conservation efforts and stewardship efforts are occurring. Are they meat verified? So we look at a lot of things that are going to make agriculture sustainable long into the future. And once we get all of that, those selection criteria done, then we will have the applications come in and we will rank them based off of that criteria. And we will begin to move down that ranking based off of the selection criteria. So it really is the start to the objectiveness of the program. The difference between the farmland program and the open space program is farmland obviously is focused on agriculture. So what are we able to produce? It's a commodity based. When we look at open space is almost the exact opposite. We're looking at the characteristics of the flora and fauna on the property. What kind of environmentally sensitive aspects does that property have that are going to be critical for Berry County well into the future? Obviously, water being one of the main ones. What are we doing to help protect our watersheds and riparian areas? And we look at actually linear footage of riparian area. Do you have a designated wetland on your property? Those are all characteristics that we think are priorities and should be valued in the county, and therefore they receive quite a bit of points under this criteria. We again look at parcel size, we look at the demographic information of the property. Are they next to an already existing conservation easement? Being able to continue what Commissioner Wing was talking about with creating those large contiguous blocks of land and creating what we like to call that green infrastructure. So whether that green is open space or whether that's agriculture, it's an infrastructure base for the county. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Any questions for Stacy? Question.
So when you're going through this criteria, do you look at like the L4046, which shows, you know, the number, how much like ag land is in each township? And do you look at that as far as a township that's you know, got a lot of ag land, you know, preserve that rather than maybe a township that doesn't have much ag land.
Sure, I think that's definitely a factor.
See it in here, but
If you look through there, the place where we're trying to prioritize that is looking at your development activity in the township. That's one area. And then we also, I believe, look at your agricultural district zoning, and we also look at your location to other protected properties. So part of that is looking at what is happening, the amount of land that's in agriculture in a surrounding area is going to help us get larger contiguous blocks of farmland. But the underlying measure of this criteria is that we want to be objective, and we don't know necessarily where in the county our highest scoring farms are going to be. And so what we're trying to do is create a balance. For example, when we look at large versus small farms, we don't want to necessarily make a distinction between the large and the small farms. Large farms obviously are going to offer more continuous acreage. It's going to give us more soils, more agricultural production. But then when we look at a small farm, we also want to reward them because they can also create as much income or production off of a smaller acreage if they're doing specialty crop, perhaps livestock, as you could with your traditional row crop. So we're trying to create somewhat of a balance where if they're a small farm, they may not be getting the points for their size, but they're receiving points for their income or having a specialty crop. And I think the same is true when we look at what's occurring in the surrounding area. Sure, we would like to have the agricultural land where we have the most opportunity for size, but we also want to look at that is on that fringe. I know we talked about before looking at development activity in the area because we don't want to preserve those farms that are so far away from development that there isn't any pressure, but not so close to where we're infringing on the investment that the local units have already made into development. So we're really looking for that sweet spot.
It's a pretty impressive list of criteria going through it and evaluating it. What are the origins of this format for selection?
Sure. I think the main thing is what is it going to take to have agriculture be sustainable 50 to 100 years from now? So we don't know what that landscape is going to look like for Berry County. We kind of can draw that. And what's that going to look like? So parcel size, that's a big one. We want to have contiguous acreage of agricultural land. When you talk about agricultural economy, we have to have the land base in order to be able to sustain our second and third tier businesses with our agribusinesses. So that was a big one. Looking at conservation efforts, one farm versus another farm. If one farm is putting forth stewardship and doing the right thing in terms of conservation, they should be rewarded because those farms are the ones that are going to help be sustainable well into the future. But we also look at the development side of that and how do we gauge where development activity is occurring and drawing that priority line in terms of the sweet spot so that we can start building out from there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between Middleville and Nashville.
Yes.
So, and when you look at this whole criteria for both farmland and open space, is this a basis? Is this basis being used somewhere else in a different county? Is this something that you drew from an existing, is this a boilerplate from something else that's been proven or looked at successfully somewhere else?
Sure. I think that's really important because I think it makes sense to look at what other programs have done that have been successful. And obviously, parcel size, your soil types, all of the agricultural characteristics, those are relatively similar across the board in Michigan until you start getting into Traverse City and the vineyards and the really big fruit ridge areas. So there is a variation of this in other areas, but this board took a lot of time and effort to dive into each one and decide what do we want to see for Berry County. So you will not see this exact criteria in any other county. This one is particular to Berry County.
Okay, but this boilerplate's being used, or this points ranking system, isn't something we created here?
No, the selection criteria is required by the ordinance, and that's one thing that is required by the state statute, is that you have to have a mechanism to be able to score and rank your farms.
Okay.
Any other questions for Stacy or Paul? Hearing none, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the Berry County Conservation Easement Board bylaw revisions, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the Berry County Farmland Preservation Selection Criteria, and to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the Berry County Open Space Preservation Criteria. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? That's 2 nays. Okay,
Same two.
thank you. The item is approved. Thank you, folks.
Can I just say another thing?
It was sure for a minute before I read the next agenda item.
We have an hour here, so we can. I just wanted to say that we are getting into our round of applications according to the state. The state has some money involved, and we're getting ready to get some land available to get those funds if possible. So we have at this point 16 different people that have asked for an application. So we're moving along.
Thank you. At this time, I'm the next on the agenda, and I am not finding my agenda request item.
We'll have to postpone.
There it is, we'll have to. All right. Question before at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval for Chairperson Wing to attend the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, Kentucky, Michigan, and Ohio Regional State Leadership Day in Washington, D.C., including paying for all necessary expenses to attend.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Geiger, support by Gibson. So, a couple meetings ago, Commissioner Geiger made mention of getting invited to the White House, which at the time I had not received the email. I since received the email and thought it looked like a very nice conference to attend. Commissioners Connor and Geiger attended a couple years ago, I think it was, and at that time the notice was relatively short, and the turnaround time to approve it, they would have already been gone and back. And I thought, well, why not try to get support from the board to travel to this event? I am by no means extravagant in the way I travel, and I will try to keep my budget as tight as I can. And if I can, depending on flights and stuff, if I can shorten the trip, I will, so we don't have so much overnight expense. I just thought I'd ask the board if there were funds available for travel to support the trip. Questions? Sir?
Anybody else want to go?
Well, I believe Commissioner Geiger would like to go.
Yes, I've already RSVP'd. I attended a couple of years ago, and I was going to go regardless of whether the county donated or made an appropriation for it. But my travel style is I like to come back the same day. So if the board wanted to extend this opportunity to me, I would not need a hotel.
What's our fund balance in that?
That was gonna be my question to him.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, it looks like you budgeted for travel for this year $14,000, and you're on track to be around 10 or a little over 10,000. So there, looks like there's only one of you signed up for the MAC conference this year. To attend, so that will like so.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you need permission?
To go?
Right. Do you need any, it says.
Well, I financially can't go on my own if I paid for my own
I'm
trip.
saying, I don't think there's anything that we need to approve.
Yeah, we need to approve the travel, not the travel request, it's the money from the travel fund.
For expense?
I think that's
I
right, because
think-
it's not a scheduled event, like MAC and stuff.
Why are you going, Ben? Is it for another
purpose or just,
No, I was invited to the same conference that she,
I think you should get paid too, so, for that.
All we gotta do is come up with.
As long as we get a good report and stuff on it.
yeah,
Well,
Pictures.
do you
How
want to
can
go
you
with-
get a good report? He's going to Washington.
Isn't that the same conference, same time as the MERS conference?
Yeah, that's in, I mean, you didn't want to go to MERS, but you want to go to this.
Well, this came up after we appointed you to go to MERS.
Oh, I just thought it was your busy time.
It is my busy time, but I can make.
Well, I mean, I'm
a-
just going by what
I
I was
can make,
listening to.
I mean, this is the White House. I've never been invited to the White
Vivian's
House
vice chair, maybe she
before.
wants to go.
Well, she's
going to
available.
the MERS
She's going to the
conference.
MERS conference the same week.
Wait,
it's
Thursday?
it's an honor, to be invited, to the White House, and,
Regardless of the administration.
regardless of the administration, I'm very, pleased that the Trump administration has made this opportunity available to, local officials like us, and, yeah, it's very humbling to get that in your inbox, and I would be, very pleased if the board would help us make the trek.
But you only need one night? Is that all you want?
I would say, might be, smart to go up to, in case I break my leg or something
I mean,
between now and
it's
October.
scheduled
Or
from
you have
1 to
a
4:30.
kidney stone?
A kidney stone, yes.
Stone?
They have a direct out of
I'd like to
Lansing, it's
amend
only
it to
$200.
2260, double what Heather's is, and they don't have to spend it, do they?
Right, that,
That being said,
to,
if
yeah.
something were to happen in the next week or so before we, finalize this, that my schedule wouldn't allow, I would definitely not make the reservations and not cost us the money. So before I confirm everything, if I don't have the opportunity to travel, I will.
I would support John's amendment.
So,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your amendment.
That's all I done is double Heather's.
So
and
there's a motion
and
to
all.
amend the proposed budget to, 2260 to include travel for Commissioner Geiger. Is there support?
Is that-
By Gibson.
Now, will he, just a minute, will he get, because you already made reservations? or
I
not?
have not made reservations.
Okay, so he could make the same, okay. So you could travel
If it
together,
runs
that
to where
makes,
you don't have.
Yep.
that makes
We'll look
sense.
We'll look at everything before we confirm anything.
He can carry your bags for you there.
I can.
So it's
My
up,
bags might be
it's up
over.
to, right, John? Is that what your motion was? Because they have to, of course, turn in their
Right.
vouchers.
Any
Support,
discussion?
or do I
I,
have support?
Smelker made the motion to amend. Gibson supported it.
Okay.
All those in favor of amending the request to include travel for Commissioner Geiger, with expenses not to exceed 2260, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
All right.
Aye. So that is the amendment. Now,
Any discussion?
any discussion
Yeah, you don't,
on
the amendment is,
the
you said,
amendment was to include Commissioner Geiger's travel.
but then you said the amount 2,000, and it
Which-
should
which
be
is-
only one, it should only be 1,130.
Two people.
But
We're
there's
talking
two
about
people.
For two people.
But you said Geiger.
Yeah, I took it
Because
as it was amending the whole,
Okay, all
include
right.
Commissioner Geiger
Okay, and
traveling
you.
as and me, so
Okay,
it's
I
the
didn't
two
know
of
if it
us.
said that in the amendment.
It did.
Okay, all right.
All right.
I do want to say that I'm sorry that the ones that went before didn't have a chance to ask.
right.
I realized that, and because it came up really quick the last time.
Well, Geiger, or Commissioner Geiger was the chair then, and he said there wasn't money in the budget, travel budget for commissioners for it.
Did we increase our travel budget after that meeting?
I think fewer of us went to Traverse City is what happened.
Okay. All right, so then the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval for Chairperson Wing and Commissioner Geiger to attend the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs Kentucky, Michigan, and Ohio Regional State Leadership Day in Washington, D.C., including paying for all necessary expenses to attend. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. The item is approved. Limited public comment. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the committee may do so for up to 3 minutes.
Is this what they call the bitter
Must be.
All right. Well, I'm not here to be bitter. But Tammy Pennington, Commission on Aging Director. I just wanted to provide a little bit of commentary to the proposal from Thornapple Manor, and I know that you did move it forward as it was presented. And Mr. Haney and I did have a nice discussion about it last week. And I did let him know that I was going to just provide a little bit of comment to you. I could sort of see some wheels turning on the adult day piece, because that is, in fact, a big part of our need for a new building, is to increase our floor space and capacity for adult day services. I understand understood in my conversation with Mr. Haney that he really wasn't interested so much in the daycare piece as he was in the housing piece. Please understand that adult day services, that we have been doing adult day service for about 15 years, and last week or 2 weeks ago, you honored Diane Neeb, our nurse who is our day coordinator and has been doing the program for a long time. I want you to understand that adult day service has nothing to do with housing. It's not a housing program in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't fit in under any housing criteria or description. Adult day, and it is also not a service for people to serve people with dementia or vulnerability or frailty. Adult day service is a program of support for caregivers. So that's really what adult day, when that study shows that there's a capacity in the community above our 9 to 20 people that we're serving. Adult day service is a program for caregivers. And caregivers who use adult day services, who place their dementia patients or their stroke patients or their Parkinson's patients into adult day service, what they're doing is they're reaching out to their community and saying, this is my last opportunity to keep my loved one at home. They are fighting the nursing home on every single level. This is their last opportunity to keep their loved one at home. So we really at the Commission on Aging view this as a community support services, not an extended care facility program. And I don't want to get too far. I've got a couple of board members here and I don't want to get too far ahead of them. But I think that we would have some real concerns with Thornapple Manor trying to supplant or replace services that we're already providing in the community very successfully, and we have a lot of testimonial that can back up that success story for us. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you, that adult day service for the Commission on Aging is not going away. We've made a strong commitment to it. We are aware that there's one other facility in Michigan that does adult day in a nursing home setting. It took them years and years and years to grow that program because of that resistance for people taking their loved ones into a nursing home. So just understand that, please, that adult day, it's not a program that caregivers are going to easily accept in a nursing home setting, because that's the setting that they're avoiding until the very last point that they have to make placement. So thanks for that.
Any other public comment this morning?
Afternoon, everybody. Gerald Retta, Crooked Lake, Dalton. Just wanted to update everybody that we're about over 2 feet higher than we were last year. And we are now past the sandbagging and calling out Service Master and different contractors to open up walls, take up subflooring, losing main levels of homes. People are moving and living in trailers now on their property because they can't go into their homes. And I want to know how often you guys have been visiting Crooked Lake. Anyone? Thank you.
Any other limited public comment this morning?
Good afternoon, Debbie Mulhart, East Shore Drive on our beautiful flooded Crooked Lake.
I'm back. Actually, I haven't left. I was just not sure what I could do or what I could say that would make any difference from anything that I have said last summer at every single Board of Commissioner meeting. The only difference here is a couple people have changed chairs. Actually, last night when we were talking about attending this morning, most of the people that I was around thought that coming here to ask for help was a total waste of time. But I'm not sure with that anything I can say today will make a difference. But I'm going to hope that somebody will at least try to help and just care. I know that none of you have been out to Crooked Lake this summer. Oh, I know a couple of you have been at a couple of the meetings that we've had out there, but then I realized what has changed from last summer. Unfortunately, none of you have seen the dozen homes that are now vacated because there's more than 11 inches of water running through them. They are now filled with stagnated water and mold. You haven't seen the acres of property loss and damage caused by high water. You haven't seen the hundreds and hundreds of trees that have died and fallen into the water because of the high water level. Standing water that produces fungus, algae, leeches, and not to mention a mosquito haven. Talk about health and safety. That is at the forefront. Not to mention the dozens of homeowners that are fighting every single day to try and save their property. The amount of dollars that are being spent on pumps, electricity, generators, seawalls, boulders, mountains and mountains of gravel and sand. Oh, and not to mention the Bobcat use and the operators to move all of that. Yet you, this BOC, all of you, approved nearly $1 million to find a solution, and yet the water is nearly more than a foot higher than it was last year at this very time. We are 6 feet over our legal lake level. As of this morning, it is 927.7 over what it should be at 922.75. If this continues, there'll be dozens of more homes and property that will be lost. It makes the millions that we're already into look like pocket change. We all know this high water is not all Mother Nature. Oh, I know she has not done her fair share of helping us so far this year, but this is human error. We also know what it is called, or last year, what was called a crisis has now fallen to complacency. It's been pointed out more than once, from newspapers to courtrooms, that the taxpayers will have to pay for this man-made mess. And yet, with no solution. Without any thought of the families that have lost their homes, the ones that are about to lose their homes, who's going to clean up this mess and who's going to pay for that? Thank you.
Any further public comment? Hearing none, is there any other business to come before the committee? There being no further business and without objection, the committee will now adjourn.
Thanks, John.